Welcome back to Success with Steven. My name is Steven Smith. On this channel, we talk about everything financial literacy. Recently, I did a video on Capital One talking about how you can 3x your credit limit on a Capital One card. And I went into some information about the bucketing system that you may or may not be familiar with. If you haven't watched that video, highly recommend it. I'll probably link it somewhere here. So today, I wanted to talk about some other things that you should know about Capital One, and you might want to avoid these Capital One cards unless you can handle these 5 things. Now, these are some things that are policy. There are some things that seem to depend on who you are and the relationship that you may have had with Capital One. And when I say the relationship, I just mean purely transactional. So we're going to get into that. So without further ado, let's get started. First thing I want to go over is that this is an objective video. And what I mean by that is, despite how you feel about Capital One personally, Capital One is the 4th largest credit card lender overall. OK, so it is one of America's, and I'm sorry, not even one, it is America's largest subprime lender. What that means is that for people who are rebuilding or building credit, most of you will have or currently have a Capital One card. Now, I don't think that Capital One is a bad company. I don't think it's a good company. I think this is a financial institution that benefits from interchange fees, interest rates, and they also do, benefit from having their credit cards tiered for their clients. Now, whether or not that benefits you or doesn't benefit you, I think that the main thing to understand is they have a higher percentage of lending to subprime clients, more than JP Morgan Chase, more than Citi, more than Discover. So with that being said, you need to use these institutions to help you. They don't care about you personally. They don't care about me. They don't really care. All they care about is the bottom line, which is going to be making money. So I believe that I have no particular loyalty to any institution. I don't believe in that. This is a pure relationship for convenience and for transaction. If I appeal to their algorithm, they will loan me and lend me products so I can leverage capital in order to do what I need to do. That is the only thing that we have going on in common. And if you're on the opposite end of their algorithm, then a lot of these things that we're going to go over in this video, they can affect you. So we just need to understand how systems work so that we can manipulate these systems to our advantage the same way that they manipulate us. That is it. And again, it's objective. So however you personally feel, you're probably at some point going to have to deal with Capital One or have in the past. So it's just good to know this information. And again, to know that it's not personal. They don't personally care about you. Most of the things that happen with Capital One are based off of an algorithm, something that no one can control. All right. So let's move on. I want to talk about hard pulls first. So if you've ever gotten a car with Capital One, you've probably noticed that this is one of the only financial institutions that will hard pull from all 3 credit bureaus. Yes, all 3. So this can be very frustrating if you're applying for a Capital One credit card for the first time and then you noticed, I just received 3 hard pulls, especially when you're trying to rebuild your credit or you're in the process of starting to build credit. And this can negatively impact your credit score by as much as 2 to 10 points. It just depends on your credit profile. And this just recently happened to me when I applied for the Venture X business credit card. I did not have, I froze 2 of my bureaus. I was trying to get away with just 1 pull from Experian, and I did receive the hard pull from Experian, but the application was put into a pending status. I received a letter in the mail letting me know that my application has been put on hold. It's incomplete because they were not able to pull from the other 2 bureaus. When I called their customer service to see if I unfreeze, can I just freeze Experian and then unfreeze the other 2 bureaus, they let me know that that was not possible. I would then have to take another 3 pulls, including an additional pull on Experian that I already took. So I declined to continue the application. I did look into some other data points, and there were individuals that stated they were able to get away with 2 pulls and freeze 1 bureau. So I haven't confirmed that this information will work myself. I'll probably be reapplying in the next 60 days to see if this actually does work. Whether or not you're familiar with, how Capital One works, it can be very tedious when you're having to deal with a creditor that does this. Now, I do have videos on how to remove hard inquiries, but as I've stated in the comments and I've stated at the end of that video, you do not want to remove a hard inquiry for an account that you plan on keeping. You shouldn't do it for an account that you plan on keeping. So when you do get a Capital One card and it's a personal credit card that you're going to keep, you have to keep that hard inquiry. Business credit cards are a different story, the ones that don't report. But for the ones that do, you need to keep that hard inquiry. And if you remove it, potentially the account gets removed, which then defeats the purpose of us getting that credit card in the first place if we're not benefiting from the reporting. So I also discuss credit card stacking on this channel. And, normally I associate that with business credit cards. However, you can credit card stack for personal credit. And credit card stacking is a strategy where you simply apply for cards in a strategic order so that you can maximize credit that you can get approved for. Normally, you want to only get cards that pull from one bureau. Then maybe you got like 4 or 5 that pull from another, and then maybe 4 or 5 that pull from another. And between all of them, you could potentially get, 15 to maybe 10 credit cards if that's, what you were trying to do for whatever reason. Normally, I wouldn't do that with personal credit. But again, if you were trying to, that's the strategy. This is something that would be really, really troublesome if you tried to do this with Capital One and did not know, because then you would get a pull from all 3. I mean, that would completely ruin your credit card stacking strategy. So that's why I recommend before you actually apply for any Capital One card, you should use their pre-qualification tool. And if you were to get denied, refer back to my video on how to remove hard inquiries. And, then that way you don't have to keep it. And if you are approved, well, hopefully you got the card that you were looking for. And if you refer back to my bucketing video, I let you know if you're approved for any of the bad or fair tier Capital One cards. You may want to just wait until you get approved for pre-approved for a good or excellent card. That way you don't run into other issues with credit limits in the future. Another issue that you may have with Capital One, and you may want to avoid them, is the 5 card limit. Maybe. And this is kind of like a gray area, but you may be able to hold up to 5 open credit card accounts with Capital One, but there may be limitations depending on the length of your account history and which cards that you hold. It's very vague how this is actually told to you. For example, Capital One may allow you to have 1 or 2 personal cards, but allow you to carry other business cards. So this is my understanding of this. If you're in the process of rebuilding your credit, and you qualify for like a Capital One Platinum secured card or a Quicksilver secured card, you can only have 2 cards with Capital One. Weird, right? You can only have 2 cards with Capital One if you have one of their rebuilding or fair credit or to bad credit products. Now, if you have excellent to good credit, like their Venture One or their Venture One Rewards or Venture X, you can actually have 5 personal credit cards. So if you're on the lower end of the spectrum as far as credit and you're rebuilding, you're now capped to 2. If you're on the higher end where you have good to excellent credit, you can now have 5 personal credit cards. So this is really misleading if you started out with Capital One's entry-level card options, as a lot of us do. And this puts you in a situation where you're very, very limited in how you can actually grow. Not only will this affect your Capital One status, when you look to other banks, now if they see that you're stuck with this very entry-level card, they may not be willing to approve you for a higher limit on one of their premier tiered cards. So I have seen individuals who have a solid credit score and some good history, and they are able to bend this rule, Capital One. So it seems that it's just kind of left up in the air. But the bottom line is, having a credit card that's a good to excellent entry level and having good spending habits will give you top priority with maximizing the accounts that you may actually be able to get with Capital One. So, I mean, the more that you go over it, the more it just seems like, again, they have the highest amount of subprime lenders, which means a lot of people fall into this particular trap or this hold that they're unaware of. And then, of course, if you're rebuilding, this may be one of your oldest accounts, which then you still want to keep the account history. So it makes it kind of hard to cancel. Now, there is an option to do a product change for Capital One, but they also kind of hide that. Like, you can go to it's a product change webpage that lets you know when you qualify to maybe change from, a Quicksilver to a Saver or something of that nature, where then you would hope that you would be able to get higher limits and then qualify for different things. It would prevent you from getting any of the introductory bonus offers or welcome offers. But, it can get you out of a situation where you're stuck into that card, and that may be a good option, but it's something where you'd have to go searching for it. It's not something that's being actively shown to you. And I've seen the pre-approval tool change on a weekly basis. Now, you could call and you can ask them about doing the product change option, and then seeing if they do that, maybe that changes this limitation rule. That may be a workaround for it. But again, none of this stuff is just explicitly said to you. There are no rules to it. And from the research that I've done, it just seems to vary based off of each individual. So I'm not really sure how they determine that. But again, if you do have that and you notice that you can't have those cards, maybe the product change option is something that can work for you so that you can get more than two personal credit cards with Capital One. Now, moving on. This is something that before anyone leaves a comment, I want to make something absolutely clear. According to reports on October 29th, 2023, the Spark Cash Plus and the Venture X business card both do not report to your personal credit. And as always, Capital One will still put your personal credit from all three bureaus. They will pull to decide whether or not you are approved for the application. However, they do not report. That's what I have seen, but I cannot confirm it. So you guys know on this channel, I talk more about business credit cards than I do about personal credit cards. I think it's a much better way to actually get higher credit limits, even though you should have at least one good personal credit card. I like credit unions on that side because they're easy to get huge limits with, which then when other people look at your credit to pull it to see what you have, they'll give you even higher limits for business credit cards. So like Navy Federal is a good example of that. They will just raise it. You can get all the way up to 80,000. Sounds perfect, right? A lot of credit cards don't just do that, but that's why I like to have one good one that I know will increase my personal credit limit over the long run. So I have a few credit cards with Navy Federal. Now, when it comes to business credit cards with Capital One, for me, they're still on the list of banks that report to your personal credit because I have yet to see otherwise. I haven't seen anyone. My brother has a Capital One Spark. It still reports to his personal credit. Now, yes, he did have this card and apply for it prior to October 29th of 2023. But when I tried to do research to actually find out if it does report to your personal credit or if it just reports to business, I could not get a clear-cut answer. Now, if you are aware or you actually have experience now after October 29th, 2023, and you've seen that Capital One is no longer putting these cards on your personal credit, drop that in the comments below so that we're aware of it. I'm just saying, me personally, to date, I haven't seen it yet. That's what prompted me to actually apply for the Venture X business, because I read this and I was like, well, if I'm no, I have no problems with being the first one to jump out and test something. So I'm going to test it, and I'll probably keep you updated with how that goes. And if I can confirm that Capital One does not report to your personal credit, your business credit cards, I will definitely let you know. But, I'm unable to confirm that. And the reason why that's so bad is if you have a business credit card, for a majority of us, if you're using them for business expenses, your utilization will probably be high. That's going to completely ruin your personal credit. Like if I use 90%, now 90% of utilization is on this card, it would completely drop my score, which could then lead to other credit limits being slashed from other institutions like American Express or Synchrony Bank. So it's just like you definitely want to make sure that you are, aware that this could be a possibility with Capital One, especially if you're working on business credit and you're looking at, doing business expenses on a Capital One card. Definitely need to know that. The next thing to know about Capital One is that they don't really have a reconsideration line. They are going based off of their algorithm. Like Capital One is very, very driven by data points. And if you call the reconsideration line, all they're going to do is run your credit again, more than likely resulting in another hard pull with the same outcome. And as far as I can see, the customer service agents have no ability to do anything other than what the terminal in front of them says. So if you were getting declined for a Capital One application, my next process would be, okay, I'm going to call. That would be the very next thing. They're going to run the same data inputs, unfortunately, and there's no human being that actually can manually review this based off of information that you gave them. Like, for example, if I have, like, let's say too many recent accounts, but someone just added me on as an authorized user, well, technically that is an account that I didn't have to apply for, but maybe I'm using it to help boost my credit. That's something that's happened with, for example, Chase in their 524 rule. You can call and you can tell them that, and they're likely to then go back and reconsider manually whether or not you qualify for this card. You really don't have any type of option like that with Capital One. They can really only do what is on their computer screen. Unfortunately, that's just something that happens, with their customer service. So again, that pre-approval tool is a great thing to use. That way you kind of have an idea already that you will or you won't be approved. And I recommend more than anything, just even if you know that you can only get an entry level card, you may want to consider waiting to get a good to fair tier card before you go ahead and actually take that pre-approval. So just keep that in mind. And if you're denied, once again, hard inquiry removal video, you can check that out. But reconsideration, while I admit things change all the time, you never know. You can call. If calling requires you to get another hard pull, I would just decline. Like in my case, I just decline. I'll double back in the next 60 days and check that out. But other than that, yeah, it's no reconsideration. And then the last thing is the infamous bucketing system. If you are unaware of how this system works, I have another video where I break this down. I recommend definitely watching that once again. But the bucketing system works like this. The bucket is in place to determine what credit limit you'll be able to get in the future and your tier with Capital One. So the bucket is part of their business model. And I have my gripes with this, but the main thing is, even if you have a high credit score in the future and you see, you expect your limit to grow with your credit score, there really is no growth if you are in Capital One's bad bucket tier, which would be basically the product would be a secure platinum or one of their secure cards. You probably only got approved for a limit of $500 to $1,000. They're pretty much going to keep you within that realm. And if you have fair to good credit, you may get something like the Quicksilver rewards from Capital One, and you may get approved for maybe somewhere between $1,500 and $5,000. And if you have excellent credit like the Venture X from Capital One, you may get $10,000 and beyond for your credit limit. And you can get way more credit limit increases when you have one of those products. Now, you can definitely see this when you go on Capital One, how most credit card companies will have like different credit card names and titles. You'll see with Capital One that there's the Quicksilver 3 times with different tier levels, one with the annual fee, one without, one for secured. That pretty much tells you exactly where you will be as far as the bucketing. And the only way that you can really get out of this is just to apply for a brand new card altogether. And just get the new product. Even with people who have done product changes, they still see the same type of limitations even when doing that. So best thing that you could do is just apply for a brand new Capital One card, which of course will result in 3 more hard inquiries and also will reduce your credit age. But at the very least, if you were to get like something like a Venture X, then you know that you're going to have a card where you could get $10,000 to start for your credit limit and then go beyond that as well. So I recommend that if you don't have excellent credit and you apply for one of these cards, you may want to wait. You might just want to wait, or you may want to go with someone or an institution that will let you start off with a small limit and then will let it grow. Maybe even looking at like Discover or one of the other various subprime lenders that are still pretty good financial institutions. So that pretty much wraps up everything. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you want me to go over anything else, especially with Capital One, I see that there was a lot of interest in the previous video, so I did want to make this one, and I can go over some of the other products as well in more detail. Just let me know. Leave a comment if you've experienced any of these things that we should avoid with Capital One. And let me know if you're having any successes where maybe you actually were able to start off with a small limit and then increase it. I like to make all of our comment sections a resource for everyone else because there are other people who might possibly be dealing with the same problems, and having more information is essentially the goal here so that other people will know what they should or maybe shouldn't do based off of the information that we share and provide with each other. I always say you need to use your peers as a resource, and I feel like everyone on this channel is a resource to someone else. So thank you so much for watching this video. You guys have a wonderful day.